of Sharon's report. And
I'll wait for that.
for now, the only technical question I would have is, would it be possible for the four of us to be on screen together? Michelle says no. Okay, so individuals, there are four of us on the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Task Force. We are not a committee, we are a working group. We have been very careful not to name ourselves in an official way, and that's part of our journey. In early June, the 2nd District started reflecting on how we, as the board for all of San Francisco, need to approach diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to be more welcoming, to foster more participation, to be more reflective, for PTAs to be more reflective of the population of the students in SFUSD. And so we started out by forming a working group, and we worked over the summer and came up with several, we met every couple of weeks, and we did a lot of research and talking to other people. And Michelle is going to talk about that more, but one of the things that we committed to was bringing a report back to this annual training, because we want to help with resources for the whole district and for all of the PTA units. SFUSD is explicitly prioritizing being anti-racist and becoming an anti-racist district this year. They have been doing a huge amount of training and front loading for all of the staff and the teachers as part of their launching into distance learning. We wanted to bring someone from SFUSD leadership to be a speaker today, and this was not possible because they are still in process. The district was able to provide this for teachers, to provide keynote speakers, to have breakouts, to have trainings, and all of that. And now there are many different parts of the district, family resources, leadership, that are working. Sharon is gonna speak a little bit about that. And they said that they would prefer to appear at our winter meeting, if that can be arranged, or to provide a separate SFUSD PTA training or speaker or something at another time. And so instead of having that speaker, we're talking about our journey, because we want to emphasize that being really thoughtful and really examining ourselves and our own roles is part of this journey, to not rush to fit it into a structure, to not say that what we must do is to plug into the way that everything has always been done. We have to be more open than that if we're going to really have institutional change and transformation. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Parker.
Thanks, Nancy. So there are four of us on this working group task force, Nancy, me, Melissa Mountain, and Sharon Olson. And so you're going to be receiving a letter. All of the PTA officers, not just the presidents, will be receiving a letter from us in the next few days that sort of details the journey so far, because we want to be really transparent and inclusive, letting you know how it's been going. But as Nancy said, we decided early in June that it was clear that PTA can and should establish itself as an anti-racist organization committed to improving and changing the systems that are structured in all these ways we all know don't equitably benefit all of the students and families in our school district, and that we needed to more actively, proactively create space for all parents and educators to feel included and feel belonging in our collective efforts, especially for those who may not have seen themselves reflected in PTA leadership and decision-making in the past. And so we started this work. And so as we started, we weren't sure what it would look like, as Nancy was saying. we knew that it needed to be a much more diverse group of people making any decisions, deciding how to move forward, but we wanted to just sort of start exploring it. And so as we started beginning, several values and priorities emerged. And I'm just going to share a few of these with you. These will be in the letter as well. We need to be aware how dominant culture works. We needed to look at how it is structured. Is it, PTA is really good at creating committees. Is that the right place for it to be? Should it be something else? We need to identify which PTA leaders want to be part of this work at the district level before creating that, and make sure that we're lifting leaders of color to help guide the process. And that it's really important that we're moving through this work with typically underrepresented parents rather than doing it for them. That's something that's really typical of dominant culture. And that we wanted to make sure that this work to move towards more diversity, equity, and inclusion in our PTAs is not just about checking a box to indicate that there's racial and ethnic diversity on our boards, but it's about creating a space and a culture that makes everyone feel that they are wanted, valued, respected, and included in our work. And that we also have lots of learning to do. Each one of us in this meeting are on a different point in our journey in understanding and in learning and awareness and all of that. So we all have lots of learning to do. And we need to all approach this sort of work with humility, and that we knew we wanted to make a statement as a second district PTA about our intent to build our capacity and build our capacity to do the work thoughtfully. And we know we want to have people with diverse experiences to help guide us through this. So as Nancy was also referring to, we determined the most important next step was to do a bunch of research to understand what related efforts are already happening in the SFUSD community. So we started working, kind of pulling together a bunch of information, purposes and goals of the district advisory groups, the APAC, the DLAC, Indian American PAC, all of those. Learn which schools may have already started diversity, equity, and inclusion committees or something related, and talk to some of them, talk to the state PTA district and councils in diverse cities, see how they're approaching it. There are several offices in San Francisco Unified who approach some of this work in some related way to what they do, see what they're doing. And so that's what we've been spending a lot of our time on over the last 3 months, is those conversations. I'm not going to go into detail about the results of those conversations, but I'll highlight a few of the takeaways that we had. You'll see a few of these more detailed in the letter. So we talked to some schools who started off with book groups or conversations that have evolved into very intentional work. We've heard of interest in having students lead this kind of work at schools. We looked at some of the resources the National PTA has put out that actually don't work and are kind of terrible. And so we're going to give feedback to the National PTA about some of the deficit-based language that they use and some of the tip sheets. We want to make sure that there, as I mentioned, that there's education around some of these, like what is anti-racism and what does it mean, and how being reflective about how PTA may inadvertently perpetuate some of the things that are typical that we can just look at and consider. We wanted to incorporate this work into, or was suggested that we incorporate it into our trainings if we're really going to be about it, that we be about it, and that we can consider perhaps where PTA cultures can be less rigid. Ask why they might be rigid, and if they don't need to be, make them a little more accepting and welcoming, so that it feels less overwhelming and more approachable for lots of parents who are coming and just want to be involved in their child's education. And that we approach this work generally from an asset-based perspective, which means that we know that everybody is bringing value to this work and every parent has a right to be involved. So just to summarize what we determined our next steps are just in this journey. Again, we're really at the beginning and we are bringing this to you because we want to let you know what's happening and also invite you to be part of this. Our recommended next steps as a group to the second district board, which they approved at our August meeting, where we want to communicate with all of you about this process and our intentions and the journey, the invitation to join us. We wanted to develop a statement to put on the sfpta.org website, establishing anti-racism as a stated priority of ours. And we will send you that link, and we'll also share, and we'll be sharing it in a minute, and in an added goal to our work about anti-racism. We want to incorporate the anti-racism training into our annual officer trainings. We want to create a page on our sfpta.org website for anti-racism and diversity, equity, and inclusion resources so that you all can find those easily, which again, we will share a link for you. We wanted to commit to providing interpretation for our district-wide meetings and translating information that might go to units more broadly. So you're seeing we're trying to do that more over the last month, trying to not just once in a while do it, but really proactively make sure that we're providing that, because we do have a lot of PTA members and leaders who speak other languages, and we want them to have all of the information to be part of our decision making. And so that's the general summary. We will also probably be conducting some sort of a needs assessment to send out to all of you to learn what you want and what you need, what issues you may need support in, and also speak with some of the administrators in our district to see what they've experienced in the schools, how we can support. And frankly, we're really excited about this and to be intentionally engaging in this, and expect we're going to learn a lot as we move through this process. And so if you are interested in joining us as we're moving through this at a district-wide level, or if you have experiences at your own school or with us at the district level that you'd like to share, if there's somebody at your school who'd like to be a contact person for this sort of work, let us know. But we invite you to ask questions to help keep us accountable and to join us wherever you have interest. And so you'll see a lot of that summarized in the letter that's going to come in the next couple of days. And so I will turn it over to Sharon now to share about the statement and the goals.
Okay, so last night we uploaded the anti-racist statement stance of the 2nd District, and Melissa's going to share it now. That currently resides on our website. Ultimately, as we move forward, right now on our website under mission, you have goals, and we're actually going to rename them because goals sounds like there's an endpoint, and all of the work that we've been doing and all of the work that 2nd District does in general is an ongoing process. It's a constant striving for process improvement or a process change or whatever it happens to be. So we're going to name it more as guiding principles, because that implies that as the world changes, as the times change, as our needs change, or the needs of our units change, that we are changing with them and providing the support that all of our schools, parents, students need. We are currently still fine-tuning what the goal statement is, or the guiding principle statements are going to look like. We have to still kind of share that with the executive board. But our goal as a committee when we first started also changed dynamically when we started to jump in and we realized we didn't know which way to go, because there's so many different ways we can go. And Michelle kind of touched upon that when we started discussions with schools and the district. And one of the takeaways of my discussion with someone from the district was, I thought, really important and impressed upon me how important it is, because the teachers and the administration have been receiving DEI type of training for a number of years, and they've used it in the way that they teach our children. And the important part as PTA, and one of the things that we didn't want to do is just create a group and kind of spin off on our own. That our work as 2nd District PTA is to be collaborative and to be partners, and not replace or try to own something, but to work together as an entire society of San Francisco Unified. And so we thought it was important that the message that our children have been receiving through their schoolwork should also be the same message of alignment to our parents, so that we are using some of the same speakers, that a message that the parents are receiving through further discussions are going to match with what our children are learning, so that there is no confusion that happens when your children are saying one thing and the parents might be hearing something else if we were to spin off on our own. And that's not the goal of our task force, not the goal of this working group. Is we're trying to bring the discussions together so that everybody is working together on an even level. And I know that a lot of the discussions that we've touched upon so far have dealt with the diversity issue. There's also the inclusion and the equity issue. And part of that too, from my standpoint in communications, resides with the website. So to be inclusive, not only to our racial groups, but also to our families that may have disabilities, that I'm looking at reworking the website to make sure that the content that is on there is accessible to people who may be visually impaired or have any kind of disability, or even to be able to translate documents, or not documents actually, translate the content that's on the website using something like Google Translate. And so I'm making a concerted effort, and I invite all of you that if you should happen upon a PDF, and I'm in the process of changing all of that out, if you happen to see a PDF and I can change it into a readable document like a Google Doc or a spreadsheet of some kind, that's my goal, so that translators can online translators can translate it, and accessibility readers can actually read it, because they're unable to do that with a PDF. So my word to all of you as you are looking at your own school site websites is to also kind of keep that in mind, because it adds to the inclusive nature of all of the families that may be either at your school or possibly prospective families who are going to be looking at your school and may be researching your websites for what your school is about, especially with the enrollment fair coming up, the virtual enrollment fair coming up. Melissa, do you have the resource list that we have compiled so far that you can share?
I will in a moment put that link to the doc into the chat.
And ultimately, the letter that Michelle referred to is also going to appear on our website for a while, because our goal is to be a widespread communication. I did create a new mailing list of all of the officers for the 2020-2021 school year based on the information in PTA EZ. And the information was whatever was in PTA EZ as far as your list of officers go, was in there as of last night. That's the list that I've used to create the new mailing list. So anybody who's on that list is going to be receiving the letter once it's been released. And again, it'll also reside on our website. So any of your families who wish to look at what we're doing, because we're being totally transparent in what we're trying to do, and make it really the heart of how we're supporting all of our schools, is also going to appear on the website, along with the list of resources that we've compiled so far. And this is a running document, and we invite anybody, I know we've said it already, but it really this is a dynamic group, and anybody who is interested in jumping on this journey with us to make San Francisco Unified, to make our PTAs that much more accessible to everybody, we welcome you. So there is no roadmap for this at this point. There is nothing that we're following, unlike our normal PTA positions. So every voice counts in the discussion, and every voice is invited. So feel free to tap any of us if you're just even trying to figure out what is it that you guys are doing, because we're answering a lot of that ourselves. So with that, I will pass it on to Melissa to cover the rest of it.
Okay. So we all reached out to some of the schools that we were already familiar with, that maybe already had a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. And I spoke to some schools as well, but I also reached out to CAPTA, California PTA, to see what they were doing and what they offered on their website and who might be their diversity and inclusion chair. So they have a D&I chair. Her name is Marilyn Lucy, And one of our board members, Carrie Gray, had already taken a training with her and highly recommended her. And so we hosted Second District, and Marilyn Lucy from CAPTA hosted a cultural bias workshop. And some of the schools that we've been in conversations with, some of those leaders came from those San Francisco PTA units. And that was an introductory level to things like implicit bias. And it was a workshop, so it was interactive. She got us thinking about our own identities and gave us examples of how different cultural layers of culture and racism in our society. So that was an introductory type workshop that we offered. Some of you may have attended the virtual Summer Leadership Academy, and I do want to share that link. I'll share that with you because they had some great resources about just how to run meetings and treasurers and public speaking and lots of things. And the same person, Marilyn Lucy, presented on understanding racial equity. Unfortunately, there is no recording of her workshop for that one, and that the reason being that a lot of sensitive topics can come up, and that's something that she really wanted to be a live participation, people actively involved in it, and didn't feel comfortable just sharing that out without her being there to help lead the conversation. But she did offer to us that she could do something called Train the Trainer. And that would be in order to invite anyone from Second District leadership to come and learn how to give the presentation on cultural bias. And so we are working on scheduling that with her. That it could possibly be at the end of September, but I think more likely in November. She's really busy and booked. So, but we would like to bring on, that's just one of several that we hope to offer in the future. So it's going to be a Train the Trainer so that you all can bring that information, if you're comfortable, back to your units for leading this workshop on cultural bias. And this is the final point that I like to make, like that some of you have already made, is that there's really a continuum in learning about anti-racism. Some people recognize that there's racism and they don't really understand maybe how it's systemic, whereas others are talking about anti-racism with everyone and anyone and very comfortable with it. And so we fully recognize that everyone is on a different level of this understanding, just the language and vocabulary that's used. And so everyone is welcome to participate. And I do hope that you feel invited to join us and to reach out to any one of us. And if you're interested in Train the Trainer.
Whoops, darn it.
Melissa, you just cut yourself off.
No, I cut her by accident. Whoops.
Just inviting anyone else from our work group to any final words. Nancy, now, are you there?
Yes, I am. So that's our progress report. So look for the letter from our diversity, equity, and inclusion working group next week, and it will refer you back to our website. And now you can already go and see the statement, and that's as far as we got. And we're really trying to keep our humility here and urge everyone who is working in their own school to just stay transparent, stay open, be willing to be vulnerable, be willing to make mistakes. It's the way we're going to move forward. Albert, I think we're done.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I just want to make sure. All right. So if anyone's interested in the work group, please, if you would like to participate, everyone's welcome, and use the group chat to chime in. Okay, so moving on to our next topic is how to act now for education. Michelle?
Yes. Okay, this will be a short presentation about Ways that you all can be active in supporting education through our November ballot. I am going to share my screen. I just have a very short presentation. Okay. All right. So I want to just give you all, some of you were able to probably attend our endorsement meeting, which was, oh boy, was it just, it was like a week
2 weeks ago.
It's like a week and a half ago. The time is all blurring together. But I want to make sure that you all have an idea of how PTA takes positions, just briefly here. This was in an email that I sent out recently, but also I'll just kind of cover it in high level because I know this is new to lots of people. PTA is 501c3, so we're a nonprofit. We are nonpartisan organizations. We can take positions on issues, never candidates. That is part of maintaining our 501c3 status. And when we want to take an actual official position as an organization on any issue, we have to make sure we have the authority to do so. And we get the authority by from our members, because as you all know, we're a membership organization. So it's not just one or two people in a room making decisions for a whole bunch of people. We have our membership help guide us in the ways that we work. And then of course we have elected leaders who will start to guide the work, or we appoint people into committees and things like that. But generally it's the members who give us authority. And so in PTA, the authorities are our convention resolutions. Those are resolutions brought forward to the entire statewide membership at the annual convention. Typically, there's 1 to 3 or 4 resolutions that are brought forward. They're debated on the convention floor. They're our very strongest authority. They're created by reviewing and researching a lot of information, reports and data, and all kinds of vetting that bring these issues forward. And then also by policies of the PTA, position statements we have, and planks. Those are all findable on the capta.org website. If you just look on how to support your school and advocacy, you'll see it right there. It's fairly easy to find. But just look on that guiding place. That's where you can find those authorities. The other thing is we take positions at the appropriate level for the issue. So if it's a national issue, the national PTA takes the positions. If it's a state level issue, for instance, a state ballot measure or a piece of legislation considered by the Senate and the Assembly, the state PTA takes the position. If it's local to our entire city and district, the district PTA would take the position. For instance, these local ballot measures that we voted on the other week, that is an issue taken at the district level, but you might also have issues at your own school site level that are just for you to take a position on. One example I can think of in recent years is that there was a cell tower being set up, very close to a school, and one of the schools was having an issue. So they were doing the research and taking the positions on it because it was affecting their school site in particular. So that's where we take positions. And so the next step, if we want to consider an issue, is we form a study committee. So for this past meeting that we had about these local November ballot measures, the particular ballot measures we wanted to consider were initiated by members saying, can you take a look at this one? So we formed at the district level study committees, and they included some members of our district board, but also some members from units all across the city. And those study committees take the issue, they research the issue itself and what the legal language and legal text of the measure is, or if it would be legislation, taking a look at that. And then they look at all of the PTA authorities that exist and see where we can find alignment that could give the PTA authority to take up an actual official position on that issue. The study committee then makes a report and a recommendation, presents it to the membership, which is what happened a week and a half ago, and then the membership votes. So at our measure a week and a half ago, we voted to support 2 local measures, Prop F, the business tax overhaul, and Prop J, the parcel tax for SFUSD. The state PTA has also taken positions on a couple of state measures. Prop 15, which you've heard of, Schools and Communities First, it's the California Schools and Local Funding Act. And then Prop 16, which is a repeal of Prop 209. It's called Opportunity for All Californians. You are all it was before it was given that prop title as ACA 5, so you've probably seen it in the news a lot, but those are the 4 measures we have a support position on that you are able to promote within your PTA. So if you have a PTA listserv, you have the authority as PTA leaders to say, PTA members at our school, we encourage you to support these 4 measures. You can talk in support instead of neutrally. Generally, you have to stay neutral unless you have the authority to take an official oppose or support position. But you can promote these all you want. There's lots of resources. I sent some of them by email about the local measures, but on the state PTA website, and I'll post these links in the chat in a minute, there are resources about Prop 15 and 16. I'm going to very, very briefly tell you about these because we don't have a lot of time and you've already seen it in your email. But Prop F is the business tax overhaul. The reason why the PTA is supporting it, there's many components to it, but we're supporting it primarily because it will ensure funding for early education and potentially increase access by strengthening the organizations that provide early education. It's also freeing up the funding that the voters approved back in 2018 to support this exact thing. So there are a couple of ballot measures that passed in 2018 that have been stuck in litigation and in court, and this was related to one of those. So that's Prop F. Prop J is basically the redo of the Prop G 2018 parcel tax that increased teacher salaries and provided money for professional development. It also established an oversight committee to make sure the funding is spent according to voter intent. And so that's what it will do, but it actually also lowers the amount that homeowners will have to pay. So I don't remember the exact amount, but what it was in 2018, it is now lower than that. So it actually decreases what people are having to pay, but it's still going towards the same thing. So that's Prop J. Sorry, there's Prop J. And then Prop 15 is this closes the corporate loophole about, Prop 13 you may have all heard of, that established and it capped the property taxes that people were paying. But what it did is there are some functions of it that allowed commercial businesses to not have to reassess their property. And so this is fixing that, and it would create more money, or would make more money available for schools and communities. And so for SFUSD, at the high end of this measure, if it passes, we could see almost $36 million annually coming to SFUSD. And then San Francisco as a county could see about $411 million annually if we pass Prop 15. So that's one to support. And there's more details we can send you about what that covers and what counties can spend their funding on. Prop 16 provides equity in state hiring, contracting, and education. It's a constitutional amendment, and what it would do was allow race, gender, ethnic diversity as factors in education, college admissions, diversifying our teacher workforce. So it allows us to address and combat racism by using race in how we make some of those decisions related to those areas. And the state PTA is supporting it because we believe in equity in every aspect of our life for our children and our youth, and having effective governance and practices that are rooted in equity. And it is our job as a PTA to secure adequate laws that will benefit our children and protect our children, youth, and families. So, and we want to make sure we're addressing the legacy of unequal treatment of marginalized communities and promote fairness. So those are the 4 that you can promote in supporting. I also want to address Prop G was one of the other measures that we brought forward and had the study committee consider. What they found was there was no clear position, there was no clear authority to support this proposition on the ballot, because we don't have any authority that says we support as a PTA voting under age 18. There was, however, a clear position that we value youth voice and civic engagement and civic education and all of those things. And so our official position is no position. There's not a yes or a no, but we encourage you and all of your members to learn about this measure and consider it, because it does affect our communities and our youth. But because we felt there was so much alignment in values and intent, what the executive board did was vote to draft a convention resolution that in support of youth voting that would establish a new authority for PTA. So What that means is we this fall will begin drafting a resolution. Again, we invite you to participate and help us if you would like to, if this is an issue of interest to you, and that we would then take that drafted resolution to our district membership to approve before we submit it to the state and to the state PTA, who would work with us and then hopefully bring it to the convention in the spring. And if it passes, that means that every PTA in California would have an authority to advocate for youth voting. So I wanted to update. That's sort of an exciting thing to have an opportunity to be part of creating an authority for the entire state and all of our members to be able to use to advocate for something that many of us may feel is important. So that is what I wanted to share about all those measures. If there are any questions, please shout them out. I can answer them quickly, but I know we want to move on to other agenda items. So let me know if you have any questions. And we have, I'm seeing one note in here. We will definitely have, let me just look through these questions to answer. If you have a legislative or advocacy chair at your school, we do have a listserv, but we have to refill it with new people for this year. So send me a note. I'd love to make sure that I'm including anybody on it who wants to be active on that and a lead on their schools. Okay, I'm seeing this question was answered. Yes, you do not have to get approval from your membership to promote these. Getting it approved at the district level is enough. You may promote them now.
The email legislation@PTA,
yes,
ssPTA.org. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I think that's all the questions I see in there. So if there's no other questions, then I will turn it back over to Albert.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Okay, moving on to Jackie. We are going to talk about reflections. Time check. We have 6 minutes till 11. Jackie, can you do this in 6 minutes? Jackie, you're muted.
She's muted.
I know, Jackie, you're muted.
Okay, I feel like that progressive commercial. And I'll Flo, okay? Okay, Flo. Al, I'm sorry, were you going to show the video? Because
I didn't put the video up.
oh, okay. So, okay, I'll send it out later then, I guess.
Okay.
Or you'll send it out later.
Yeah,
so,
I could do that.
Thanks. So Al's gonna send out a quick reflections video that there's a couple, 2 of them. One that is a quick with music, inspiring video to get excited about reflections that you could share with your PTA. And then there's another one that's more in-depth instructions on how to get your school's PTA reflection program going. So those 2 videos that are more in-depth, so I don't take up too much of your time. But for schools that want to set up a reflections chair, if you want to, if you already have a reflections chair, Albert, are they going to send you that, right? You get that information.
I'm going to solicit names.
Great. So if your school does have a reflections chair, or you want to be on your school reflections chair, or you want to start one, send your information to Albert so they can jot you down on their paperwork, and then he'll send that to me. Your school submissions, we're going to open them up from October till end of November will be when the entries will be due by the end of November. October is promotion month. November is get it ready to submit month. December will be our judging month. And January, we will submit the winners to the California Reflections PTA. There'll be more information as we move along. Me and Kevin are trying to figure this out in a new way where we can all enjoy it virtually. So any feedback, any suggestions are greatly appreciated. Albert, will you have my contact information up, or?
I can do that.
Thank you. So
yeah. So what
if
I'm
you have
going
any questions, you can let me know. But
okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to email all the unit presidents and solicit reflection chair names of the reflection chairs. I only have 2 so far that submitted, so I'm going to follow up, send it out, and include the 2 videos, and then CC you on it, Jackie. and then include your contact information and go from there.
Great. And so one more thing, if there are
Karen.
no,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jackie.
It may be helpful to just explain what Reflections is, because there are a whole bunch of folks here who have not participated in Reflections.
it's true. So it's true, right? And it's not the reflection in your mirror. So Reflections is the national PTA art competition that's been going on. I've got somebody help me here, but it's been going on
50
for
years.
30 years. 30
50
years,
years.
right? 50 years.
50 years.
Great, wow. So yes, we've been going on for 50 years, and it's national art where we celebrate arts, and every year we have a theme. And by the way, thank you, Carrie, because that's a great segue. I would have forgotten that October is when you submit your theme for next year, for the not next year, but the next year after that. So if you look at the Reflections PTA website, they'll tell you there how you can submit your theme. And so we change the theme every year. This year is I Matter Because. And this was selected this winner was chosen 2 years ago. So it's just kind of weird, but the theme is I Matter Because ... So you could submit entries digitally. It could be composition, a dance video, art, digital art, hand art. It's all on the PTA website. The winners of our SFPT, of our second district PTA, will move on to the California Reflections. The winners of the California Reflections will move on to the national Reflections. And it's funny because Kevin, who's on the Reflections chair with me, went to nationals when he was a little kid. So I thought that was really cute to know. So Kevin, who's the co-chair with me, actually entered and went all the way to nationals. So we do have a history of national winners. But I will send out flyers and blurs so we can share it on social media. If you have more in-depth questions, there's the second district website, the California PTA website, all has information. The video will go out, and you can get my contact information from Al or Carrie, and Albert and Carrie. So any questions?
I do.
Sure.
I was just in the process of, well, no, I already created an email address for Reflections. It's
Of course you did, Boo. Of course you
at
did.
sfpta.org, and any messages going to Reflections at sfpta.org go to both Jackie and to Kevin.
Great, thank you. Awesome,
So-
look at that.
And with distance
Yay.
learning, this
Our
is a
communication
great
team.
time.
Thank you, Sherry, so much.
You're welcome.
So this is also a really great distance learning activity, because it's something that if you take the theme, your students and other students at your school can work on the theme at their own time in their homes if they want to. Or your PTA could create kits or a project so that you can all participate.
It's true. I'll give a suggestion for some of the schools. I am working with my local Mission YMCA and Excelsior Youth Art Exchange, and they will be providing space and materials for Excelsior students who want to do this art project but don't have a space or art supplies. So right now they open up their space to just 2 kids at a time in the Excelsior Art Studio Youth Art Exchange. So they're willing to help kids who don't have supplies, either come pick some up, or so if you have in your area something like that, or a YMCA, you might want to ask them. But that's a little partnership I got in the Excelsior. But I'm an Excelsior girl, so you know.
Great, thank you, Jackie.
Yay, thank you.
Okay,
I'm
great.
excited. So I'm really excited about this year. So I'm going to use our old poster this year from one of our Reflections entries last year. I'm not going to use the district one. I'm going to make our own with one of our own art entries, a local entry. And I think we'll do that next year as well. So our posters will be, hey, I like your background, Albert. What?
Oh, thanks.
I do want to point out that September is Arts Month for the PTA.
Mhm.
So that's, thank you for the background. September is Arts Month, so it's a great way to kick off Reflections.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank
Okay,
you.
well,
Hey,
great.
Albert.
Yes.
I thought that what CIS did in terms of getting the kids involved in the Reflections program was a great idea of having a lot of kids entry and having the kids work on the Reflections projects. I think you said during the course of a PTA meeting. Of course, everything is a little bit different, but that might be a way, an idea for other schools to, how do I do this when everybody's remote? But that might be an idea how you can get more schools involved and more kids at that particular school working on a project if they're collectively doing it during a set time all together.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Sharon. Let me just spend 1 minute talking about that really quickly. So what CIS did was we blended a Reflections night onto a PTA meeting. So the PTA meeting was really short, and it transitioned over to the Reflections night really quickly. And we had rooms set up for dance, literature, photography, film production, music composition, visual arts. And then they had 1 hour to work on their things. They might have worked on it previously. And the parents would fill out the applications right then and there. And at the end of that session, they would submit their entry. And at the end of the night, we would have 200 entries just like that. And we're done. And I think CIS was well represented at district, and I think also at state. We didn't quite make it to nationals yet, but the more you have, the better your odds. So, now we have a virtual format. That'll change it up a little bit. So we'll try to see what we can do to pivot over to the new media. So food for thought, sharing best practices. And that's what we do at PTA. I think in the chat box, when I asked everyone how, you would put this year in a nutshell, there was a general consensus that there was concern, uncharted territory, but there was also optimism as well. And we can get through this, but we could only do it together and through deep collaboration. And that's why we at Second District are here to support everyone here in San Francisco. We're here to support all the units, and we're here to support, whatever you guys need. So we have our 411 Wednesdays, and we want to hear from you. What would you like to hear about? We have our coffee chats. We're shooting for every Saturday now. And if you want to just come by, it'll be a session. It's like a Seinfeld session about nothing. We just want to hear how you're doing, and informally over coffee. And we'll go from there. And we're going to do this the rest of the year. And we would like your participation. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear and feel the pulse of every school as much as we can. And we need everyone to participate. So we're in it together. We say it, but, we do it as well. So we're here. So, and that wraps up the meeting. And I could stick around if anyone has any new business or concerns to bring up, but meeting is adjourned.